Okay. Well, thank you for joining me, Jeff and Seth, to an interview that's really designed to help each and every franchisee get better, hear best practices, understand that they've got the same challenges as everyone else and how we work together as a community. And maybe we can just dive in and you can tell us a little bit about yourselves.
Hi, my name is Jeff Gaudin. This is my son, Seth. And he and I and my other son, Judah, we run several Subway restaurants and bought into Teriyaki Madness right after COVID. And had kind of put a damper on trying to open and stuff like that. But we opened at the end of this past year, 2022, and been open about 3 months now, right? 3 months? A little over, right over 3 months.
So all of the trauma of getting a shop opening is fresh. That's awesome. So when did you first buy into the system?
Right when COVID started. I think it was right around that time when things started to get ugly.
The beginning of
And
2020. I remember it well.
yeah, we were trying to, we started talking about leases and talking with people, and boy, it got interesting. Really got interested in talking with some people, and the lawyer felt like there would be a lot, my lawyer felt, he's a real estate attorney, felt like there'd be a ton of places available. Baton Rouge did not do that.
No one did it.
Cities. Huh?
We all expected it to happen, and it didn't. It was crazy. Real estate didn't budge an inch.
Yeah, it didn't crash. And he just felt like we'd be able to walk into a lot of good lease situations, and we found ourselves that not happening. I think a lot of people just held the key, so to speak, held on to the key and just gutted through. I know we did that with all of my Subway locations. We floated it. In fact, my bank didn't even do the PPP loans. So I floated a good bit of saved money to keep everybody. We didn't lay any, we had about 100 employees, and we didn't lay anybody off. We just kept everybody and floated it.
Okay, so let's go to prior to Teriyaki Madness. Jeff, you've been doing Subway for how long?
Right about 22 years. Started when I was 40, and been doing it 22 years now.
That's a long time. And how many Subways did you end up owning?
8 of them.
And don't you sit on an advisory board or a regional council or?
So I sit on a board. Subway changed their business model to where they wanted franchisees to be bigger franchisees. They wanted the territories to be bigger territories, the district agents, those kinds of things. So I've been sitting on the board since almost the beginning. The board kind of funny. So in the Baton Rouge metropolitan, which is not a giant city, there was almost as many Subways as they are in the whole Teriyaki brand. There was about 110 Subways at its peak in the Baton Rouge market, which is like 3 counties. And I mean, just so much saturation. And so I sat on that board for many years, and then they made a bigger board, which comprised of Louisiana, part of Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. And 7 of us represented those 4 states to headquarters. So there was about 100 of us that represented Subway to headquarters, national.
Okay. And Jeff, were you working at the Subways?
When I was working at the plant, I worked in the petrochemical industry. I had started building into Subway, and I would take this one location, and that manager say, "You are the manager. I'm not the solution to your call-ins. Somebody's sick. You have to run this thing, and I'll be there." And I was 50 hours a week at my full-time job and 50 to 80 hours a week at my Subway and then Subways. I did that about 4 years before I retired.
Okay. And how were you able to retire? Was it just depending on Seth? Were you in Subway?
Not at that time, but yeah, I was in Subway for let's see, since that was my first job. So before I was of legal working age.
We can
Slave
say
labor.
that. Plenty of us have been working in restaurants before legal working age.
Slave labor.
I don't know if it was slave labor. I think I was making $2.35 an hour.
Well, I made the 235 at Winn-Dixie. I couldn't wait to get away from my job. My dad, he had a business, and I was making 215, and then I got a raise to 235.
So Seth, this was your first job. What are some of the things that you learned at Subway?
I learned a number of things. You know, whenever people know that you are the owner's son, they'll treat you differently sometimes. And, you know, I guess they expect a lot out of you. So I developed a really good work ethic so that way people would have respect for me, because if I didn't, then they would just be like, oh, that's the owner's son. I made sure I developed a really good work ethic, working in the Subways from a young age. That way I, was treated well amongst my coworkers.
What does a work ethic at a Subway mean?
I mean, just same it is anywhere, keeping busy with doing everything, working hours, making sure, like what I did when I first started working in Subway was I would just make sure if there was like 3 tasks and 3 employees, I'd pick the most difficult task out of the 3 and then let them do the other ones. Right now, that was one way that I developed respect from my coworkers. But eventually, I was able to start managing Subways, and that taught me a lot. Through ups and downs, it taught me a whole lot and prepared me for Teriyaki Madness, which is what we're doing now. And it's a lot bigger of an operation than the Subway is. The Subway is a smaller operation. In a Subway, I can individually train each person that I hire. With the Teriyaki Madness, there's a front of house and a back of house and all different stations. And so you got to be able to train people to train people. You got to be able to trust people in positions that can train people. And so it was a good step from going from a Subway into the Teriyaki Madness.
So did you go from being an employee to managing one shop and then managing multiple shops?
Yeah. So I was an employee at Subway, and then I managed, I took over one shop that had a lot of issues with a manager. We got rid of that manager, and I stepped in kind of a problem store, and tried to gain the respect of the employees and kind of turn the store around to where there wasn't so many problems. And then once I had that store under control, then I'm moved on to the next store, which was even a bigger problem store. And I did that for quite a while. I was in college and I was managing both of those stores. And it took a lot of time and a lot of effort, and it helped me balance, multiple things at once with a couple different stores. And then also going to school, I was able to balance my time and learned a lot through that. I learned a lot.
So, one thing that I did, Michael, is when Seth was a freshman in college, I put him in charge of the Subway. He started working 14, 15 years old, working for one of my better managers. And he worked under him and actually kind of ran things because that manager didn't mind kind of yielding over responsibility. So when Seth became a freshman in college, I put him in charge of one store. And when he became a junior, I put him in charge of a second store. And I did the same thing with Judah. And I always said, if they can run 2 stores and they can go to college full time, then they can do anything. And so what I do is just kind of cross my finger and say, okay, you graduated. What do you want to do? Do you want to stay in this family business and work with me? Or do you want, am I going to lose you? Because they get offers constantly from people seeing how good they work. And they would come and joke, hey, so-and-so restaurant offered me a, lead job and this and that. So, but it was something that we did. I put them in charge when they earned the respect from the crew and put them in charge. And if they can manage 2 stores in college while they're going full-time college, and I figured they could pretty much do anything they needed to do.
Well, it sounds like you learned that working your job and then building Subway. It sounds like you're working about 100 hours a week. How long were you doing that? How long before you quit your job?
So for 4 years, and I'm going to say four, I do this often to employees who tell me they feel like they work too many hours or they work till 8 o'clock one night and can't come back in the next morning at 8 o'clock. I do this. I worked 4 straight solid years, 100 minimal to 130 hours a week. I slept 2 hours a day and many times required my wife to shake me to wake me up. So, when we were at conference and guys were talking about, I worked a bunch of hours and our kids had to come to work. And I looked over at Seth and said, you were that kid at work. We used, my wife and I would bring the kids, put them in the office and we would work the line and do whatever it takes until we built good managers who could take over. And when I said, you manage this store, I meant it. You have to manage this store. I am not the solution to every problem you have. I'll be there with you. I'll assist you. But when I'm running 8 stores from oversight, I can't go make sandwiches here, when I retired after 4 years, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, each manager of stores called me, said, I need you. And I went fill in spots. On Friday morning, I wrote a letter and said, I am not doing this anymore. I did not quit my full-time job to come take somebody's job. I think minimum wage was $5-6 an hour. I'm not coming to take somebody's place at $6 an hour. It's not that I'm too big for it. It's that I'm not the solution. I'm not that solution. I'm working on the oversight part, and I expect you to manage that store. And so I just filled in that.
So it sounds like Seth was the troubleshooter. So for those franchisees who feel like they need a turnaround story, what were the things that you really focused on to fix a store?
Well, looking back at things now, I was actually talking about this with my dad the other day, thinking about how bad of a manager I was compared to how much better I am right now. And because I was learning a lot, but the main thing I had was that I just really cared. That was the main thing. I just really cared. And I was also, I was just reasonable with people. I've never been one to yell or cuss at employees or coworkers and berate them in any way. I can talk to them normal, but when I first took over, sometimes people will be used to managers like yelling or cussing at them or this or that. And it's like, if you don't do that, then sometimes they just think they can walk all over you. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be reasonable, but if you can't come to work, you don't have a job. And so I just kind of found a balance from that between just trying to be reasonable and just caring and working hard. And I guess somehow it just worked out. And I learned a lot through the way, but I think the main thing that helped me whenever I took over that problem store was just getting rid of 1 or 2 cancerous people.
Yeah.
And that's just going to always be the tell of any store at any point, is the culture of the store can be affected by 1 or 2 people. And if you can get rid of the bad people and replace them with some people that aren't cancerous, then boom, a store can be turned around like that.
Man, I'm going to go ahead and I've got that in recording. I'm going to use that over and over again because I believe the team and the integrity and the culture of that team is everything. And there's always someone who isn't pulling their weight that makes everyone else kind of come down because it's not respecting the people who are working hard. So that was that's a big piece. So what about the manager? So now there's 8 managers. How many shops do you have left? Subway.
So I've gotten rid of 3 of them. I'm down to 5 of them.
Okay.
The brand's gone through transition and a lot of things. And boy, that's a big story in itself, just unpacking the Subway journey, because I've been with it.
I think it would help a lot of us to understand kind of the trials and tribulations that another brand has had. Maybe you can share kind of your perception of that in call it 5 minutes or less, if that's possible.
I'll try to bring it on.
Gone through a lot.
So I got in when the brand was just starting to peak. I mean, sales were doing good. Some guys were doing 2,000 and 3,000 at a store, and they were making some money. I don't know how. I got in and I would purchase an existing store doing 8,000 and bring it up to 18,000. And I was considered like maybe some guru. Like, what am I doing? I just worked all the time. And I figured I wasn't smart. I never had been the smartest one in the class or not, but I worked hard. I worked hard, and I believe in communication and interpersonal relationships. And I built all of my stores, doubled their income, doubled their sales, that kind of stuff. Sadly, as good as some things that, that there are with Subway brand, this other brand, one thing that always stood out to me when I met you guys is there was diversity in thought with y'all group. Y'all were different. Everybody was uniquely different. And with Subway, everybody in Connecticut, it's probably several thousand employees, 5,000-10,000 employees. So most of the people in that private brand were in the inner circle, were just their son, their daughter, and they all thought, and nobody could interject any diversity of thought. So when 100 people represented the United States would speak to them, it was like speaking to a wall. And it's not that I'm smart and the owner or, the CEO is dumb. It's that sometimes you need that diversity in thought to clash some things so that you can come out with a third variant. And I feel like the brand grew. And Michael, I was making great money. I mean, 8 locations, $500,000 a year, doing really good. I mean, and then the ugliness started when the brand wanted to pass McDonald's for the most locations. And it came at the expense of the franchisees. I am competing with myself all around the city that I'm in. And all of my stores are pretty condensed and close. So I compete with myself. So my first store, when I would make $160,000, $180,000 a year profit, each time I opened another store would drop 25,000 or 20,000. We'd have to bring it back up. Then it would open another one and drop it down. The brand is great in a lot of ways, but it's just out of favor right now. And I think it may pick back up later. Maybe. But that's not going to be our problem. Our thought is to exit. But the way I look at this thing is simply this. They have been able to, with their money, be able to condense buying power, have everything in one place on one website, one login. And that was one thing when I started opening the shop, I have like about 20 logins. And I thought, I kind of missed that about Subway. One login for everything. Credit cards, like anything, buying things. So there's some benefit with those bigger companies, but there's going to be drawbacks. And you've got to be, as a franchisee, you're part of the franchisor's blood, and you have to follow their lead. Like buying outside of the system, I never did that in 22 years with Subway. Never bought anything outside of the system. And I'm finding myself with Cisco having to run the Target, having to run the restaurant supply. And it's like, I've never done this before. This is new territory.
COVID created a lot of that situation. Yeah. We could talk on and on about some things we need to address with Cisco, but I think they're, just like all of us, are a bit of a victim of kind of circumstance coming.
No doubt. No doubt.
But let's talk about Subway a little bit more. Now, you said that, gosh, how many did you say? There's 100 something just in Baton Rouge. What kind of territory do they set up? Do they have territory?
Did you say territory? What is that? There is no.
There's a couple of Subways right across the street from each other over down the street here, and I never understood that. And now there's no Subways across it. Both of them went out of business.
That's sad. The funniest story, and it's going to really make it sad but funny. My lawyer, a real estate attorney, went into the Secretary of State building where you start a business at. And he went into the men's restroom. And out comes a Subway worker from a secret door, like a side door, in the Subway, in the men's restroom. And I've been telling him for years, I'm tired of all of this saturation and I need to diversify. And he said, Jeff, I finally see it. They even had a Subway in the men's bathroom in the Secretary of State restroom.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. You know, you see Subways or Starbucks everywhere. When Subway starts building them in the restrooms, you got an issue.
Yeah. Well, it was actually on the other wall. It was outside.
I get it.
For our playful time, he finally understood what I was trying to tell him.
Yeah, no, I get it. Okay, so for Seth, let's start segueing over to Teriyaki Madness. So what is the difference, the biggest surprise to you from an operations basis between Subway, which has kind of prepackaged everything and their sandwich artists is super simple, to Teriyaki Madness, which we like to think we're simple.
Yeah. Operationally, I mean, it's just more involved. You know, there's I got to get there, you know, earlier to and prepare things earlier in advance than I could Subway. For Subway, if I want to prep something, I could prep it right there, boom, be done. And I only need to prep so much. We do more volume at Teriyaki Madness. So I have to think, all right, if I don't make this teriyaki thin sauce now, then I can't make the stir fry later because it's thin sauce. And then I won't have any because stir fry is what we use for everything. And so it's like more involved with steps you have to do. So you have to make sure you're on top of, you know, all prep and different things like that. Subway, it's a lot easier to just catch up on prep because it's not multiple steps involved. It's not, you know, making teriyaki sauce on a range. And so you can't do it during lunch rush. You have to do it before the store opens or maybe during some dead time. There's nothing like that where you have to really plan in advance as far as prep and operations go. Then every bowl takes a lot longer to make than it does a sandwich. So you have to be able to have not just one person that's fast, but a couple people that are fast. Because if I'm at Subway and I know that I was an extremely fast sandwich artist, so I could just have me and one other person. I could run the whole line. There's absolutely no way I can do that at Teriyaki Madness. If I get a big rush, I cannot run the range and the grill and point all together by myself and just have someone ring things up. That's impossible if I have a rush. So I have to be able to rely on other people using their abilities and also moving just as fast as I am, or faster, you know. And that's another thing I found out, that there's a lot of people that have years of kitchen experience on a range, on a grill, and they're more experienced than I am. So I've had to manage people, even though they may be better than me at different stuff. That was never an issue at Subway because I was just by far the fastest at making sandwiches. So I automatically was like, oh man, he's really fast at
Your brother don't agree with that. Your brother thinks he's fast.
Well, he was slower. But I was very fast. The hand speed, making sandwiches, hand speed, ringing people up. I was very, very fast at that. But there's people in the kitchen that are faster than I am. So yeah. I've had to be able to gain their respect without being faster than them. And so relying on other people has been another really big thing with cooks in the kitchen.
All right, and we'll come back to employees in a second. But how about for you, Jeff? What's from more of a corporate basis? Just so I can learn. I made a note here, this one login for everything. I don't think that I've even considered that to be a benefit. You know what? If you're going in to buy shirts or doing something else, what's the problem with a couple of logins? But I made a note here and we'll go see if we can't make it super simple. What other things does Subway do either better than us or maybe not as good as us?
You know, I haven't really downloaded any feedback information about when we were building and things like that. One thing about the process of building with Subway, which they made it, and I don't mean this in any way negative, but just the comparison, the difference. I would measure out a prospective location and I would draw out what I think might work. I mean, because I've been doing it 22 years, I can kind of lay things out. And from there, they would give me a CAD drawing. I would give them exact measurements and they would draw some up. And 2 days later, I got a prospective drawing of a proposed drawing of what could be. And I'd say, move chairs here. Let's move that around. Let's a little less that. And in-house, they would do that. And I know we can't do that in Teriyaki Madness the way it is right now. But that was a big change for me, hiring an architect. Now, I'd already used this architect whenever I needed to do something mechanical, but I drew up all my restaurants and drew the layout and used the exact floor plan if something was pre-loved, existing already. So that was a big change for us. I'm not going to say there's anything that I dislike about the system here. I don't. And in fact, I even told you in the beginning when you asked me, what do you think about the food? I said, well, Michael, I'm not a foodie. I don't pay attention to that. I just need to make money. And I wanted to report back on you about 3 weeks after I opened, after going to an LSU game, I stopped at Panther. And I tried all kinds of their food. And I said, Seth and Judah were right. This food is good stuff. Their food couldn't compare. It didn't touch our food. So maybe I'm not a foodie yet, but I could compare and say, this is good stuff.
We'll get you addicted to that spicy chicken.
I am already addicted. Yeah. That's about all I get every time.
One thing I think that's a good point is, when you got 37,000 shops, doing a design turnaround is pretty quick. We do the designs in-house. It just takes us a lot longer. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about that. Let's talk about the challenges and the frustrations of not just opening a Teriyaki Madness, but that real estate and construction process. I want to make sure that everybody has an understanding that it's not quite as smooth as perhaps one imagines, no matter what you're doing, especially permitting.
Yeah, we went through the old owner of the building we were leasing sold in the middle of the process, and that all changed everything. They just halted stuff and required different things, and then came in and really were kind of odd about things. The permitting changed because I'm in we call them parishes down here, not counties. In this new parish in East Baton Rouge, their permitting process was kind of different, a good bit different from the parish that all my subways were in. So that was a learning curve in itself, because one parish puts the cart before the horse, and some things we were doing that were completely different in this city when we built the TMAD. So building a TMAD, not knowing what it looked like, I really needed to see it. I'm a visual person. When I see it and go in and look in an existing place, I can wrap my head around it when I see it rather than just from the prints. And I really would suggest anybody who is considering building their first shop to go and spend some time at somebody's and look at everything and see what everything is doing, what each piece of equipment does, how it drains. We got lucky with some things with draining. Otherwise, we'd have to spend another 20 grand breaking up cement. So we got lucky with how we could do some plumbing. But I think if a new prospective franchisee went into a store and sat with a franchisee and went through everything, even if they have experience, look at what this brand equipment, what it does, I think it would benefit them, because it benefited me going to Texas. I tried to stop in Alabama. I wasn't able to view the kitchen, but I was able to go to Texas and look at the stuff behind the scenes while we were building, and it helped me wrap my head around each piece of equipment and what it would do.
Yeah, I think that context, that's a really good recommendation. We do it in hot training, and we do the mechanical drawings, but being able to see it in action with a different design, with a different franchisee, and get their input is a great suggestion. Okay, how about from a team hiring perspective, Jeff or Seth?
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I know where this is going here. What were some of the challenges, and what were some of the things you were really trying to accomplish when you hired the team?
Compete with the government?
Well, in the beginning, it seemed like we call it a mirror test. If they fog up a mirror, then go ahead and hire them.
That causes a couple problems. But
yeah, that was in the beginning, because we weren't getting enough applicants. And you know, I tell people this a lot. I'll put out an ad on Indeed, 300 people apply, and you're like, man, that's a lot of people. Well, maybe 1/3 or half of them actually respond if I ask them to come in for an interview. And then out of 100 people, maybe 40 of them, 20 of them show up. And then half of those are actually good. So it was a heck of an experience. Now the good thing is,
that's good. You're making it sound like that's good numbers. I wouldn't even think it to be that high of numbers.
well,
Yeah, you guys were hiring. You guys were hiring during the toughest hiring I've ever seen in my entire career.
Yeah, it's bad. We're competing with the government, and when you compete with the government, you lose.
Government and Amazon, those are two tough competitors. But I think, I've heard just recently things are getting a lot better.
I've been able to get a couple good people recently. It's been good. I've obviously dealt with turnover right from the beginning. I'm trying to keep all the good people that were here with me for the training while the trainers were here, because they obviously have the most experience. But I'm only holding on to maybe 6 of them, I think, which is not too bad. But it's been eventful. That's for sure.
How do you keep your Subway employees? What retention programs do you put in place? Or is
honestly,
that tough too?
Honestly, I'm gonna tell you, we've been able to retain people better at Subway than at TMAD, and we pay them much less money.
It's more brainless, or
yes, it is.
Teriyaki Madness is a more difficult job, and so it's just going to require higher paid people. But the turnover, I've had more turnover in my 3 months of managing a Teriyaki Madness than I did all throughout Subway. I did not have that much turnover. And maybe in the beginning of when I took over a new store, there was a lot of turnover because there was people that didn't like me or I didn't like them, and they were just going to have to we just weren't going to work together because they were either too lazy or didn't want to show up, whatever. I'd get rid of them, or they would just see me and they just they liked that their old boss let them do whatever they wanted, and so they would leave. And then after that, I would have hardly any turnover. No, I'm thinking maybe now I've gotten to the point after a few months, I've had the people stay with me that were here from the beginning, and I've hired some new good people. Maybe I'll have less turnover here. Maybe just because it was a new store opening, it was so much turnover, but man, it's been a lot. It's been a lot of turnover right in the beginning.
Well, add to that, the trade area that we're in is probably, I'm not going to say one of the worst. It's a very high volume area, but the trade area has really kind of turned around. And what you're having is you're having the better quality workers go to other trade areas. So you're fighting for the lower tiered people. And it's a tough fight in that little area that I'm in right there, which used to be premier. 10 years ago, that area was premier, and it's not.
And we pay the same or more as almost every other restaurant or place. We're in a Target shopping center. Target obviously pays more. They start at like $16 an hour to every employee. But besides that, any restaurants that are around there, we pay the same or about par, or maybe more than others. So it's not like we're way under, and that's why everybody's just leaving because they just want to go make more money. It's just something new, and people maybe try it out for a little bit and don't like it and go do something else.
Yeah, I just think it's the nature of people.
I think it's the nature of people, and this is a common thing that we see, is that as you're building that team, you got to roll through a few people, either who don't feel like they like you don't like them, they don't match the culture. But then once you go ahead and filter through a bunch of people, then they start sticking, and getting that team built simply takes time.
Yeah. And getting out the cancer. I mean, you could work 6 months and I always remember whenever my managers would tell me, man, I got a good crew. It's like, don't say that ever again.
Yeah, knock on
Because
wood
you're going to
anytime you
ruin
do it.
And
Yeah.
so I think that the cancerous person, like we talked about, having that one bad apple, we hate to get rid of them if they're good, but if they're cancer, we just can't keep that.
Well, there are bodies showing up, and when it's tough to hire, you know, getting that person in there, you know, I see it all the time. It's, oh yeah, Joe didn't show up yesterday. I hope he shows up today.
Yeah.
And when you're acting like that,
Yeah.
you're telling everybody else it's okay to show up whenever they want.
Yeah.
So that's, but you know what, in the beginning, you got to do what you got to do until you know, you keep hiring and you build the
Right.
team, and then you can go ahead and build in the discipline and the culture that you want.
Well, Seth has done this before, and you know, it's like I told him. I said, now we're past like this 3-month mark. We're not going to be key holders. Now it's being aggressive. It's working on employees and saying this is not acceptable. We're not tolerating this, and doing the things to build sales and doing things to where you're not always like I was. I can't be the solution to all the problems. Seth can't be the solution to every problem. They're going to have to learn how to manage themselves and work the line and do things. And so Seth can do other things besides run around and be their solution.
He's got to be a manager. Well, you said that earlier about your employees depending on you coming in for the first 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, you know, the employees will go ahead and take what they can get. That's for sure. But I'm sure you've got some shift leads and some folks who have kind of shined that you're starting to have some conversations with about there being opportunities and more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. What other questions should I ask you? I asked about a team. I asked about the differences between Subway. What kind of vision do you have? What's the intention here?
Well, for us, it's always been, I mean, I've talked to you personally about some of the things that I wanted to do, and that's been that vision that I want to be able to do. We want to exit the Subway brand. That's not, that hasn't been easy. They are restricting new buyers they're very tight on who the new buyers would be. We've got some prospective things we may be able to sell pretty soon. And if so, then we can immediately begin to progress moving forward. The problem is you can't get a whole lot of money for them. They're out of favor. So the vision of what we're doing is also we want to build these 3 shops out. And I want to find a way to creatively bring people in. You know, I spent some time yesterday with a Subway franchisee who needed, you know, help kind of solving one of his internal problems. And he heard that I was doing this, so he wants to come see the brand and come check it out, or eat free, whatever that might be. But you know, I've been getting those calls of people that said, hey, I want to come check it out. I want to look at it, that kind of stuff.
So why is that important that you're bringing people into the brand? What does that do for you?
Well, one thing, if I can bring people around me here, then I can borrow from other people when you can't get product in. That's been the big thing of having all my Subways. When I have 8 Subways, we never were out of anything. It's unacceptable to be out of anything. I never like that. When I see somebody say we out of, no, we're not out. You go in the car and you go and get some right now. So by having other people around, we can draw off of everybody's success. Just in the Baton Rouge market, we were able to spend probably about $90,000 a year with LSU, with their football and baseball and basketball and all their teams, and got a lot of exposure. I would love for us to have 5 or 10 shops in this area, being able to collectively co-op. I mean, because I was the spokesperson for that. I'm the one who signed the contracts, or at least signed it on the end to release money. Subway did the contract, and I signed the release of it, being one of the board chairs for this region. So, you know, having more shops allows more people. So as you know, the brand Cane's was built from right where we're doing our stuff. Also, what's Izzo's, Cane's, Lit Pizza, Walk-Ons. They're all built from where we want to do our second location. And what they did was And I worked with another brand to help them build their brand out like this, a jambalaya shop. They had a center for where their first one was, and then they created users at LSU, and those users went back to their cities, and they all became users in those local shops, where, you know, whatever brand it was. And I 5 or 6 brands built right there near LSU.
So it helped with operations, so you can probably trade employees even and some product. But it sounds like
brand awareness.
What's that?
Brand awareness
That's
is a
it.
big thing.
Even if it's other shop owners, that's a big deal. It drives traffic. But
Yeah.
I think I heard you say that you did co-op marketing where you could go sponsor LSU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At one time, in the last years of it, it's been just Baton Rouge at about 90 grand a month. And I was the key person involved with that, where I would say, yeah, less of this, more of that kind of stuff. But at one time we were doing the whole state of Louisiana and spending about $250,000 a year, where we were really involved with all of their stuff, you know, their radio shows, all of these things. And so the brand name was mentioned continually. So listen, I want to get that suit. I want to get a sumo suit, because I've got a couple ideas and I want him to interact. One of the big things with LSU is Mike the Tiger, their mascot, the guy that runs around. He's extremely creative, well known, and I want to try to find a way for this sumo guy to interact with Mike the Tiger to try to get some brand awareness out there. So, you know, my contacts, I've spoken with them, and they wanted me to spend a lot more money than I wanted to spend at the time.
Yeah, those are expensive. So who would win? You dressed as a sumo or Mike the Tiger?
Well, I'm not going to dress as a, I might, I don't know. I'm not going to say I won't. You know, we're all crazy. All of my kids and I, we're likely to interact and be that person. But those people are really good that dress in Mike the Tiger, and they've probably got about 10 of them that do it. And having a guy in a sumo suit, I've got, you know, a few ideas I wanted to do and try to find a way to get LSU to buy into this at a cheaper price. We'll see.
Well, I know you're fresh into opening. You're less than 100 days. But what have you found to be your superpower? And I'll let both of you answer that question. And you can either agree with what each one of you say, or we can fight this out here as to what your superpower is.
And outline that superpower question, because I remember we had that little thing when we opened the Access. Well, would we rather fight this or that? Or
No.
So
what are you extremely good at? What's your core skill set that you think you're better at than anybody else?
I'll go first. So when corporate came and trained our front of the house people, they trained them how to interact with the customer and how to suggest things on the menu. And well, hands down, hands down, I am good at grabbing a customer, grabbing their attention out in the front of the register and saying, hey, let me tell you about our brand. Let me tell you who our brand is, what we're like. And I would take them through the menu with a little 30-second speech that would just kind of highlight everything real quick. And we started getting people commenting on, you know, Facebook and whatever. Hey, met the owner. And me interacting with people is by far my biggest strength. I can work with the meanest critters there are out there and try to have them. And Kevin could tell you about one story where somebody came in and tried to call us out on something. And before you know it, I had this guy eating out of my hand.
I hear that. I've heard that in my interviews, is that focus on front of the house and making sure those folks up front are smiling and interacting makes a big difference.
Yeah. I would say that's my superpower.
Okay. And then you can think about your kryptonite here while Seth is answering the superpower.
Oh
my. Oof. Superpower. Let's see.
You want me to go with I'll give you a second to think. You want me to go with my kryptonite right now?
Sure.
You get like a few more seconds to think. You better come up with something good. So my kryptonite is Seth had to leave a few days to go because he was best man in a wedding. And I'm gonna tell you what, he ain't doing that again. He left. I don't want to manage those people. I want to manage the oversight of it. I'm telling, I was like nice for a day or two, and I was ready. I'm like taking knives, like I'm taking names, I'm cutting people. I'm not putting up with this.
You know what? For those of us who have For those of us who have earned the right to be in the background and to manage the big picture and be developer like you're doing, aside from dressing in the sumo suit, we're just sitting at home letting others do that job. That's a tough one.
Yeah,
All right.
I don't want to manage people.
So is your superpower managing people?
I was gonna say that I can. I'm really good at like spending a shift with a particular employee and just kind of like getting along and getting them on my side in situations. So like if there's something that's going on, maybe that employee didn't like something that happened, whatever, I could just kind of spend a shift with them and just kind of change their change their attitude towards something, or change their something, maybe introduce a couple things like, hey, think about this or think about that. And throughout the shift, I feel like I'm pretty good at taking their thought from one thing to another to kind of shift their focus on what they really need to be focused about. Maybe don't focus on this or that. So I've been able to get along with my crew pretty well, especially if I'm able to spend some one-on-one time with them or spend some time during a shift.
I agree with that. You've always been very steady about things.
Well, I heard that earlier in our conversation, because that's how you turn shops around, was having that empathy and working with the employees to let them understand that you understand, and being able to have them match that culture and fit into your community. I think that's a great strength. How about your kryptonite? Can you think through that pretty quick?
My kryptonite, sometimes I am too nice to employees, and that can be a really bad thing. I'll be, I'll have some employees, or I had a shift leader that used to work for me, and she'd be like, Seth, you're not going to get all over them for something they do that. It's like, there's a time and a place, maybe I'm too hands off on it for too long, before I step in and say, all right, this is the deal. And that, because I don't want to drive people away. I don't want to drive good people away if they make a mistake or if they do this or that. But there needs to be boundaries set where this is the rule and this is not the rule. So I feel like sometimes I probably am too nice, or I'm just I let people go too easily sometimes, and without getting on them enough. Because I've never been one to cuss or get screamed, because I'm reserved, and I try to stay calm and stuff, because I don't want to lash out at people in anger. Because I've seen bosses that have like the manager that I took over before, he was somebody that would just like get mad at somebody. It's like, all right, that's not going to solve anything. But there's a time and a place for being stern, right? There's a difference between being stern and cussing somebody out or something like that.
Yeah, I never did tolerate that. So when I found a manager was doing that, I always holler, because I never did scream, holler, and cuss at people. I just think it's bad. I did want to point something out. Seth is managing the shop. He really is managing. I'm not managing. I'm going to watch some things that's ugly and it's hard for me to do. I've had to do this in Subway, and I'm going to let him learn to some things, and I fuss with him about things, those kind of things that are, but it's a father-son. But I wanted to speak to this and say this one thing. There are people in Subway system that I helped get in. I brought a lot of people in the Subway system, and they let their children manage their stores. And sadly, their children weren't up to the task. And they thought, I'm going to do it, and my boy or my daughter or whatever, my son-in-law, they're going to manage. They're going to be great. We're going to make tons of money. And their children really, really sucked. And somebody might say to me, well, Jeff, you're going to think just too highly of your sons. And I probably do think too highly of them. But they've produced it through the years. There are people I've seen in the Subway system that I've helped get in. And I told them when they asked me, fire your daughter. I'm thinking about one guy I worked with years ago. Fire your daughter. She sucks at this. Hire a manager. And I think some people, it may be better as a franchisee, need to hire a manager and let a manager do those ugly things that they're used to doing in a restaurant. Because honestly, a plant worker or a postal worker or somebody going into a restaurant, they're not used to managing restaurant people. And you may need that restaurant person who can get in there and tussle with them and say, this is how it's going to be.
I think that's great advice. All right, to kind of bring this to a close, anything you want to tell the other franchisees? Anything you want them to know?
Well, you want to go first? What you want to do?
No, you can go.
I just want to say to other franchisees, it was good to meet them in Vail. And obviously, I want to interact with them more. I'm so used to doing that because I'm the one that gets the calls in our region. I think it's a couple of probably 2,000-3,000 franchisees at least that I represent in these states. And I'm used to interacting with them. I'm used to interacting with people on the board, trying to help solve things and join together. I'd love to do that one day. You know, I may not be able to solve anything, but I can maybe try to help ease it out a little bit, you know?
Yeah,
I'm used to doing that.
It's our culture, right? Is at least in Teriyaki Madness, the franchisees want to help each other. Yeah. It makes sense that if they're successful, it's going to help you.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. Anything from you, Seth?
No, I'm looking forward to having more franchisees close by us. That'd be great. That's the one thing that's been different because we don't have any in the state. So as much as we'd like to see them, we can't. Everybody's just a phone call away, obviously, but it's good to be able to meet and have times where everybody can just kind of discuss problems, solutions, different.
And I got a few people that want to talk to the brand. I got a few people that we've talked to in other cities.
And so that's what's good. And I found that with franchisees, whenever we met in Vail, that everybody's willing to talk about those kinds of things. So it was very good to meet them, and we look forward to meetings like that.
Well, keep sending them over. It's nice to figuratively be able to go to your neighbor and borrow a cup of sugar.
You got that right.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Thanks. I'm sure the franchisees are going to get something out of this. You may be getting some phone calls and emails. So hang on tight because you provided some great insight.
Cool.
Awesome.